sponsored by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast rentals in Brooklyn, New York. To find out more, visit their website, jmrny.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and joining me via Zoom today, he is the founder of Loft, New York, Mr. Daron Jenkins. Welcome, Daron.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you. We got hooked up through my associate producer, Adonis Tsilimparis. He went to one of your events. You were doing events. That's become a whole different thing these days, and I think you're doing some stuff virtually, and I want to get into all that. But first, before we talk about Film Loft New York and what you guys do, I want to talk to you about you and just kind of see how you got into the business and what's your origin story, so to speak.
I'm a lot like a lot of the people who were born in and around my time. I was inspired by obviously Star Wars, just like every other filmmaker will ever say, right? And, when Star Wars came out, it kind of really gave you a new view of how things could be created from a special effects standpoint. And, at the time I was young, so I didn't really have much exposure to the industry, but I did know I wanted to do whatever that was on the screen. And so I started out building models of all of the Star Wars ships. And then it just so happened that my brother, who is a little bit older than I am, was a comic book artist. And I kind of came into the film industry from the back door of this medium of creative. So I got into comic books, and then I started drawing. And then when I got to probably high school, college, I started doing acting. I started doing theater productions and got into it that way. And then when I got to college, got into the comedy world and then started doing that and taking film production classes on the side as kind of wanting to learn the behind the camera thing. But acting was kind of my thing at the time, and I was doing a bunch of different films. I was in Malcolm X, Juice, Distinguished Gentleman, a lot of those projects. And then I did a movie, I won't say which one, but it really kind of left a bad taste in my mouth from the in front of the camera side of things. And this was probably 1998, somewhere around that neighborhood. So the video cameras started popping up, and suddenly I said, well, you know what? Maybe my fortunes lie behind the camera. And so I just decided to stop acting and take up both screenwriting and directing. And I got into special effects. Actually, I was working out in California for a while in special effects, working on, I think the first film I ever worked on was probably Die Hard with a Vengeance, maybe. Might have been Die Hard. I did a couple of episodes of 21 Jump Street, worked on the first Independence Day, which was kind of cool. And then I came back here to New York and continued my fortunes. And, I've been playing around on various pieces of the puzzle ever since. Most notably, probably the newest thing would be producing. So
very cool. So you're very well rounded. It sounds like. So with
Hmm.
Film Loft New York. So first of all, what is Film Loft New York, and kind of can you give us its origin story? Like, how did it come about?
So when I got back to New York from California, I started working for this association of media publishers. So I was basically, you know, networking with, all of the CEOs and CMOs and all the C-level people from Disney and Wall Street Journal and all Reuters and New York Times. And I learned a lot of stuff there because we would put together a lot of these white papers. And they started talking about this idea about content being king and how the digital publishers were at this new place where video was starting to take hold of the market, and they needed to understand how to monetize it, where it was going to come from, who's going to create it. And so in order to do, I started thinking, like, I know all these different individuals from both the creative side and from the business side, and I started to do these events to kind of put the two together, filmmakers meeting digital publishers to kind of create this perfect marriage. So I did this a number of years, I think 10, 15 years. And we get to around 2014 and, I'm still doing them, but I felt like there needed to be some type of evolution to what I was doing. Like, much like all of the people who I'd meet at these networking events, people would come to me first to meet this director or meet this producer or meet this casting agent or meet this screenwriter. And I obviously couldn't continue on that level. And so I was at a WeWork one day to meet a friend for lunch. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is kind of cool. I've never been in a co-working space before. What's it all about? And so I got a tour, met some of the people. And I said, something like this for film would be amazing. Like a place where filmmakers could come, they could connect with each other, they could meet with, investors and, sponsors and distributors and all these different pieces of the puzzle. And the business side people could kind of use filmmakers as their testing ground for a lot of different products and techniques, and they could write white papers. So I came up with this thought about creating a warehouse, getting a big space, a warehouse, and creating this place where, we could come to innovate for film and television, not just from a creative standpoint, but from a technologically standpoint, and also kind of like a place to reinvent how film is financed, because I think that would really be the real kicker, the thing that would kind of put the juice in the jug. And so in 2014, I started researching everything, putting all the project together, meeting with co-working founders from all over the country, meeting with investors, meeting with distribution companies like Netflix and Hulu and all these different other companies, just to get an idea about what they thought about something like this. And then my last thing I met with was the city of New York. And they unfortunately had the idea just around the same time I did. And they came up with the same, well, it was a little bit different than my project, but that's when they launched the media center that was located in Dumbo. And, it didn't happen fast enough, but I'm actually kind of lucky it didn't. So
In what way do are you lucky in that scenario? And like, how has that evolved now?
I'm lucky because if I had opened it right now, I'd be sitting on about 25,000 square feet of empty space due to COVID. I'd be probably holding the bag on a number of, a number of dollars in the overhead department. I'd have to lay off staff. I would have had to do a lot of things that unfortunately a lot of other companies are doing right now. Even New York Media Centers has shut down, and WeWork is having its problems, and co-working in general will have some challenges in trying to scale back up to where they were. So I kind of, it's funny because as we were developing the idea, there was a thought that, I think maybe like a year, 2 years ago, this thought that, maybe we don't need an actual space to be what we want to be. We can be virtual. We can be online. We can do everything that we want to do without having to invest in real estate, at least at this moment in time. So I kind of, I'm fortunate in the sense that we didn't go down that road with a physical space. But we're lucky and we're unlucky in the sense that other people have had to scale back, and that's unfortunate. And we're there for those filmmakers, those startups within the media space that still need services, networking, information, finance, distribution, access to knowledge, and just a general, the one thing about filmmaking is, for the most part, unless you're shooting something, it's a pretty solitary, career. And one of the things that I've talked to a lot of filmmakers about over the years at my events is that we Film Loft is not just this company that it's not just a company. To me, it's an idea, and it's a family. And we try to create. That's kind of the reason why it's called Film Loft New York, because our idea was to launch hubs in different other film cities. So there would be a Film Loft Atlanta, LA, Chicago, Miami, and then at some point overseas we would launch as well. And we still may do that. I don't know. But I think for right now, we owe it to the creators here in this city to be there for them, to help them, with the challenge of connecting to opportunities so they can pay bills, giving them knowledge by creating our podcasts, our events, our panels, our film festivals, all of the conferences that we do, to continue doing those stuff. And by putting together an initiative that we hope at some point will help give them even more opportunities and more access to Hollywood than they would ever have at a standalone event.
So the original idea was, let's get a space where people can come and congregate and work together. But now, like in the virtual space, are you like doing these different things? Are you doing kind of like everything via Zoom? Or are you doing like give me an example of like an event that you're planning, or one that you've done recently?
We launched an initiative called Change Hollywood, right? And this initiative is to kind of help populate. It's kind of like populate Wall Street, except for populate Hollywood. And part of our initiatives is to launch a bunch of different events online, and we do it through Zoom. And what's great about it is, because it's virtual now, we can now bring speakers from Hollywood without them having to get on a plane and fly here, right? So what was this, 2 weeks ago, we did our first industry AMA with C.R. Capers from Harlem Film House. She came on and talked about the industry, gave tips to filmmakers, talked about their initiatives. It was really a great conversation. And then a couple days later, we did another one with Brian Yang from 408 Films. And Brian has been in the industry for a while. He talks about it from his point of view, also from an Asian American point of view, also from a producing and directing point of view, which was really great. And both of them have been really, I'm very lucky and very fortunate to have them as mentors in our program, and they've offered their time and energy to kind of help pay it forward, because I think that's, the one thing about film is that it's very, who you know. It's very who you know. It's always been who you know. And the more people you know, the more things you can get done, especially in this time and age where you can't go to a networking event anymore. There's no, you know what I mean? So how do you get anything really done? So our online events, like our panels and our talks and our podcasts, are meant to kind of expand their knowledge base, give them, and also just give them, because you're sitting at home, there's nothing to do, it's good to hear this conversation, right? To hear what other filmmakers are going through, and how they've solved certain problems with being able to shoot now, and where they're finding jobs and those things. But we're also doing we're actually talking internally right now about an intensive workshop program that we're putting together online, that people will be able to do. We have a writer's room that we do, which is also very cool. So we're trying not to make it too different than in person. We're trying to give them as many of the same things that we would normally do, like live online. And at some point we'll get to, we'll expand it, and we'll do, like, our one initiative we'd like to do is get involved in new technology and VR, AR, and XR, MR, all those platforms. We're going to get back into those arenas as well. So
I've been interviewing a lot of heads of film festivals lately. And, one question that I've been asking is, do you think that in some shape or form, the virtual medium will be a here to stay thing? Like, even if you do have a physical event, even if you do have either networking or a film festival or something, that, the virtual will have to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. And most everybody's saying yes. Like, it's going to, not everybody knows how it's going to be, but do you see that as well? Do you think that Film Loft will stay virtual forever, or do you want to get back to a time when you're actually getting people in person again, or do you see the future as sort of a combination of the two?
That's a good question. I have a friend, his name is Devin Dixon. He's one of our partners as well, and he has a digital platform where he helps filmmakers and film festivals screen their films online. And he's kind of been forward thinking in the sense of how he's built out his platform now to include live Q&As and stuff that you can do at the same time. So film festivals can now still do their film festivals and provide all this other stuff. So we've had a film festival for the last 17 years. We run it only on Valentine's Day. And one of the reasons why we've been able to sustain it so long, we've always sold out. It's always been very popular. And the only reason why I think that is because people really like that in-person connection, right? I think there's something just more, tangent about the fact that you're in the room with all these other individuals. And so to answer your question, I think that the online platform, the online events, I think, to be honest, even before COVID, I thought it should have been a big, like, if you were doing events, I think it should have been at least a 70-30 split, like 70 live, 30% online. I think you're missing out an incredible amount of opportunity online if you don't do it. And I think it won't be to that extent when we go back. I think it'll be more the opposite. I think it'll be 70% online and 30% in person. And I think those in-person events will be so much different than we've had before. So I don't think you can get rid of this face-to-face experience. I don't think people, like, when given the choice of going out and sitting at home for an event, unless they're still fearful of getting COVID, I think they would choose to go to a live. I would choose to go to a live event if I could. I think there's just so many things, so many stepping stones that we have to get through to before people feel comfortable enough to go back to that space.
Yeah, we're in a place right now where everything's very nebulous, everything's very up in the air, and we don't have a credible antiviral treatment. We don't have a credible
Right.
vaccine yet, and all these things are hopefully going to come down the road. But I do feel like people are talking about the movie theater experience going away. They're saying
Right.
that if these big movies can't
Mhm.
make it into the theater, if they're going to go streaming, if the Wonder Womans and Black Widows and giant event movies don't make it in the theaters, that we're not going to have theaters anymore. I don't know if that's
Well,
true,
here's the
but
thing about that. The thing about that is, I think, like, I love going to the movies. It's like my favorite thing to do in the world. I can go to a movie anytime, any place. But I think theaters, for the most part, have always suffered from, like, I think they're better now than they've ever been. They were better before, like, before COVID. There were some nice theaters in the city, like, that you could go to and watch a movie. But I think there's a stigma to some of the theaters sometimes because they feel like they're not clean enough. They've always been thought of as not sanitary. I remember back, I don't know how long it must have been, when they had the outbreak of bed bugs in New York, and some of the theaters on 42nd Street having to shut down to clean the theaters. So I think those little, like, even though it's almost like an abusive situation in a lot of ways, where maybe the situation's over, but you still, in the back of your mind, you remember this, right? And so now we've got COVID, and people are not sure if they want to be on top of each other in this little dark room anymore, right? So, and there's the fact that movies are expensive. So they're like, why should I go to a theater and risk my life for $30 when I can stay at home and watch it, right? I understand that thought process. I don't necessarily think I agree with it. I think I mean, COVID is just COVID. It's, I don't think theaters are any more susceptible than, say, going to the ballpark, sitting next to somebody. But I do think people are fearful of that situation, and I can understand why they would do that. I hope that people still go back to theaters, especially the small theaters, like in the indie theaters, because I think those are the ones who, like, are usually, giving us the best community experience of sorts. Theaters like AMC and Regal, who I think they said they closed down till next year sometime. That's it's hard to feel sympathy sometimes for them because of the how expensive they can be for us. But I want to go. I want to see Tenet. I haven't seen it because I don't trust going into the theater right now. But who knows how that may change in the next 2 months.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot unknown, and I feel like that would probably be the "Hey, everything's okay now" sign when
Mm-hmm.
when movie theaters, and some movie theaters in some parts of the country are open, but they're open at a lower capacity. So even if they do, some of them can't afford to stay open because
Right.
their overhead is too much for the amount of tickets they can actually sell. And I think it creates, possibly for the indie filmmaker and the person who, like, for me, I got to a point even years ago where I wasn't really concerned about having my work displayed in a movie theater.
Right.
I was going for television. I was going to go for streaming just because I think that's where everything's going anyway. And
Right.
maybe I hope it's not the death knell of theater. Like, I hope it's not the end, but
Mm,
I've always seen it kind of A, pricing itself out of existence, and B, if you don't make a gigundo, Warner Brothers, Disney, giant event movie, at some point people are just not going to go pay. They're not going
right,
to pay to see your love story or your romantic comedy or your mystery or whatever. It's very, very rare. So,
right,
the places people are seeing those is online anyway, and everybody's going to streaming now even more. I mean, maybe, COVID is just the thing that kicked it into gear and made it
right.
accelerate. But you know, it's a loss because when you and I were kids, the theater was this communal space where people went to
Mm,
experience things together. You laughed together, you
right,
cried together, you could sit in the dark with a bunch of strangers and share something. And it's sad that that's being lost. And I
right.
don't think, just like the events, there is something about going up to somebody and shaking their hand and meeting them in person that is just way different than meeting somebody this way. It's definitely this is definitely changing everything, and it remains to be seen
Mhm.
whether or not it's permanent, good, bad. But I do feel like you, there is going to be a hybrid situation for any event. And it's
Yep,
and I think your ratio is pretty good, 70-30. It'll probably be,
yep, yeah,
um, for better or worse. Whether the kids will be fine, they're
yeah,
born with
exactly.
the young people. They're all born with microchips in their heads, and they don't meet anybody anyway. But for us who remember what it's like to see people in
Yeah,
person, it's a little sad. But anyway, we're running a little bit long, so I'm going to wrap up. So for people who want to know more about you and people who want to know more about Film Loft New York, where can they find you on the web?
they can find us everywhere. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Film Loft NY, and they can go up to our website at filmloftny.com.
Great. Thanks so much, Daron. And thank you all out there for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, norestoftheweekendpodcast.com. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest, Daron Jenkins, and I'd also like to thank our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.